Let's talk some SEC conference title odds for 2025. Who is right now favored by Vegas to win the SEC? The favorite is really no surprise. You got Texas at plus 210. And we gave our 2 cents on how we think the Big Ten is going to look. Spoiler, we think that the Big Ten is wrong in how they put those odds together, or that Vegas' odds and how they put those odds together for the Big Ten. Texas at plus 210 feels exactly right. And some people may get stuck on the conversation of, well, Arch Manning's going to be this, he's going to be that. And it's like nobody actually knows without a shadow of a doubt what Arch Manning is going to be. We think we do. We think he's going to be really talented. Texas being the favorite isn't an Arch Manning conversation to me. It's a Steve Sarkisian conversation, and it is a trenches conversation. Steve Sarkisian has now built a real deal, functional strength monster in the SEC that's going to be good, not just this year, but for years to come. And we'll talk more about this a little bit later, but my thing with Texas is, going back to Steve Sarkisian, like good coaches get over the hump no matter how long it takes them. You look at Ryan Day this past season. He can't win the big one. He can't win the national championship. He can't do this. He can't do that. And then he eventually gets over the hump. Kirby a couple of years ago. They can't beat Bama. Is he really the guy to get him over the hump in the SEC and to win the national championship? Eventually got it done. Jim Harbaugh for a long time at Michigan. Can't get it done. Eventually he does get it done. And it took him a little less than 10 years, but he still got it done. And I think that's just an intriguing thing about the world of college football in general. If you take enough hacks at it and you take enough approaches the right way, you can eventually get it done. I think that's Steve Sarkisian in Texas. I think he's going to adapt, and I think ultimately they're in the right position to at least have a chance to win the SEC. Now, Georgia at 390, this is, I also think, very fair. To me, you're accounting for a new quarterback, but also accounting for the fact that it's still Kirby Smart. And I'll say this too, Kirby Smart off a year now where he's missed the national title game 2 seasons in a row. These aren't national title odds, but I think Georgia with a little bit of fire in their belly, probably not the greatest thing for the rest of college football. But them at the second best odds is, I think, probably the right place to put them. Here's where it gets more interesting. You got Alabama and Tennessee at plus 700, tied for the third best odds. Let's start with Bama, though. Them being third to win the SEC in a year where Kalen DeBoer is a season removed from losing 4 football games, which is like unheard of in Tuscaloosa. This is a classic what does Vegas know situation for me. I don't think Vegas is just ignoring the logo. I think they probably know people will put money down on Alabama regardless. But like, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I think that the offense will be more Kalen DeBoer-ish, but we don't know for a fact. I think the defense should be more settled and have some guys now that were young last year you played on the back end that you hope take a next step. But again, a lot of it is trying to fill in a blank that we don't yet have answers to, which I suppose is what we're doing right now in February. But Alabama at plus 700 feels just a little bit tricky to me. So we'll keep a pulse on that. And plus 700, yeah, just very curious to me. Now, Tennessee at plus 700, I love Josh Heupel. I think that he is a guy that, I said it before, I think he's a top 10 coach in the sport right now. The tough part for me around Tennessee is it's going to take something from Nico Iamaleava at quarterback that I haven't seen just yet for me to buy stock in them in 2025. Now, long-term, I believe in Tennessee, and I believe in the future. I believe how they're building that. I'm not even saying I don't believe in Nico, but based on what he has been and based on what they don't have on the perimeter from what I can gather right now, Josh Heupel's offense is built to out-scheme you in the trenches, run the football at a high level, and then when you give them matchups, when you try to isolate too much in the perimeter to account for the run, then they hit you over the top, they make you pay, and it's bad vibes for everyone involved on the defensive side. What's the most important part of that equation we just spoke to? Outside of running the football, having guys that can win their matchups. And you had that in 2022. Cedric Tillman, whenever he was healthy, was a guy for you. Brew McCoy, obviously, you know what he is. Jalen Hyatt, all those guys, like they won their matchups. I don't see a ton of matchup winners for Tennessee across the board. You hope Mike Matthews rounds into form there. You hope that Chris Brazzell rounds into form there. But like, that is the thing for me. In addition to Nico Iamaleava, I need to see some winners on the perimeter for Tennessee to be a team that I think competes for the SEC. So I'm a little bit bearish on both Bama and Tennessee just because there's so many unknowns around them. Now, LSU at plus 1,000 might be my favorite play of this entire field. It's almost the inverse of what I just spoke to. I don't know a ton about Bama. I don't know a ton about Tennessee. I feel like I know a lot about who LSU is going to be. I know Brian Kelly in year 4 should have that culture more dialed in. Like they should, keyword should, win the games they're supposed to win. I think they also should be better on defense because you get Harold Perkins back healthy. You got Whit Weeks back in the fold. You have a defense now, their second year under Blake Baker. Garrett Nussmeier is the most proven passer in the conference that's returning. Top 5 portal class. Like you throw all these ingredients into a bowl, and it's tough for me to see LSU not competing for the SEC championship in 2025, or at least being in the mix all the way until late November. Like I really, really love LSU this upcoming season, and we'll talk about them a little bit later in the show. Hint, hint, wink, wink, if you're tuned into the full thing right now. Now, it's worth noting Ole Miss at plus 1,000. I like Lane Kiffin. I like Austin Simmons, who's going to be the quarterback for them next year. I'm a little bit more bearish on them than I was a season ago. Last year really felt like the year, if you're an Ole Miss fan, where you're going to make some noise in the SEC. So I'll kind of hold my chips before I cash any in on Ole Miss. A&M is really intriguing to me, and a lot of y'all are watching this right now, especially if you're an A&M fan, saying, JD, don't do it. Don't fall for it. Every year we got the Aggie hype, and then every year they fall flat. I said this previously, but I'll say it again. Y'all, I have not really fallen for the Aggie hype historically. Like, I was the guy that was saying they were going to win 7-8 games, and they would be in a team that is competitive but not yet competitive for the SEC championship. Texas A&M to me is kind of like that frozen pizza you see late at night. It's just, as time passes, you just feel better and better about it. It looks better and better as midnight hits, 1 a.m. hits, 2 a.m. hits. You're like, hey, man, that frozen pizza might just be the play right now. It's not yet 2 a.m., so I'm not yet buying all the stock, but with what they have in Marcel Reed, with Mike Elko another year as the head coach out there, with them becoming, I think, more just solid in his way of doing things, I am one good spring game away from seeing Marcel Reed throw a deep shot to Kevin Concepcion and being like, okay, I'm in on the Aggies. Preseason, I told y'all they're in my top 10. Are they in our way too early playoff field? Remains to be seen, but I really like A&M here going into next season. Now, South Carolina is the wildest of cards to me in this whole equation. I just think Lenore Sellers is that dude. Like, if I go bankrupt, it's because I've probably bought too much Lenore Sellers stock and it doesn't cash. I'm not planning on going bankrupt anytime soon. I think he's that special. I think with the way he can take over a game, he can make up for what South Carolina maybe doesn't have from a talent roster perspective next to the big boys. I don't know if they win the SEC, but they're one of those schools that I think will probably wreck somebody's chances to win the SEC, and I think they're going to be right there in the mix for the college football playoff when it comes to Selection Sunday. Now, there's 2 more schools I want to talk about, and I want to talk about them together because I think they are in a very similar position. Oklahoma and Florida are both very trendy picks, great value picks, obviously, based on the massive odds they have to try and win the conference in 2025. I don't know if they win the conference, but I think they're going to make some noise. And the reason why I feel that way is exactly what I said a second ago. Who they have at quarterback can be the massive disruptor in the SEC. John Mateer coming over from Washington State. We talked about DeMarco Murray a little bit earlier in the show. Hard for me to think that DeMarco Murray saw John Mateer wing it around a little bit and said, you know what? I might want to stay a little bit longer here in Norman. Hey, if that guy's pulling the trigger for us and this is the offense we're running, like, okay, maybe we got a chance here. I think he's that exciting. I think he's that dynamic, and I think he's going to give them a chance in every single game they play. Same thing with DJ Lagway, man. Like, Florida right now, I think the odds for them are like somewhere like, or the win total is somewhere around 6.5. Y'all cash that over. DJ Lagway is 6-1 as a starter. 6.5 wins on the season. The schedule is brutal. I get it, but like the way that Florida finished last year, there's a lot to point to that's tangible to get me excited about them, and I think people in Gainesville feel the exact same way. So the SEC will be madness as it always is. The door is wide open for a new quarterback or a young quarterback to make some real noise should they have a tremendous offseason when it comes to developing and progressing and all those things. But at the top, I think Texas and Georgia is still the right move. But underneath them, I think it's anybody's game, and I am juiced, absolutely juiced, for us to get spring games and eventually real games to get a gauge for how that conference is going to shake out.